interesting marketing strategy for you authors out there. If you get me to recognize your name, chances are you'll get me to buy your books, whether I've ever read them or not. Sad. So sad, but true. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you about my experience reading the author that you picked for me in the month of April. So I switched it up a little bit, and instead of a pick my book, I did a pick my author, and I then tried to read all of the books that I owned by that author. The author you selected was Linwood Barclay, and he is very well liked, and his books are also very well liked. And I remember the first Linwood Barclay book that I picked up was A Noise Downstairs, because it sounded creepy and eerie. A book that would really blend the line between thriller and horror. That's kind of how it sounded. And then once I had that book on my shelves and the name was familiar, I ended up buying more books by Linwood Barclay because that's what I do. I stumbled upon a release called Elevator Pitch, which really excited me, really sounded up my alley, and it was an anticipated read, and I snatched it up. And so thank you to you guys for giving me an opportunity to read it, or forcing me to read it. I ended up reading 4 of those books, and I started with No Time for Goodbye because I also owned a physical copy of No Safe House, the sequel to No Time for Goodbye. So I wanted to start there in case I wanted to read No Safe House. So I listened to No Time for Goodbye on audio, and it is the story of a married woman named Cynthia who, as a teenager, woke up one morning and her mother, father, and brother had disappeared. They'd vanished without a trace. And Cynthia never heard from them again. And obviously, even though now that she's married and she has her own child, that specific occurrence of her life still haunts her. She still has so many unanswered questions. When the book begins, Cynthia is, in the process of filming a documentary series or a docuseries about the incidents, and opportunities start presenting themselves for Cynthia to learn what happened to her family. So that's the story that we follow. The interesting part is that the story is told primarily through Cynthia's husband's perspective, Terry. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I had a really hard time with this book. I had a very difficult time finishing it. I was not excited by it. It wasn't a case of couldn't put it down. It was a case of put it down and didn't look forward to picking it back up, but forced myself to do so because I couldn't fail on the first book of this entire project. So I finished No Time for Goodbye and decided not to read No Safe House, which is, like I said, a sequel. It's not a continuation of the story that's in No Time for Goodbye. It's just revisiting those characters and another melodrama that they have in their life. Incidentally, No Time for Goodbye does have a 4.01 average star rating on Goodreads, but I would probably put it at like 2.5. And here's the sad part. I can't tell you specifically what this particular book did wrong. All I can say is that I didn't connect with it. I didn't sympathize with the characters. I didn't even sympathize with Cynthia, who you would think that somehow I would be able to. Somehow the reader would be able to sympathize with this woman who woke up one morning and never saw or heard from her parents and brother ever again. Like, I just didn't care. And that'll be a recurring theme throughout this video, just to warn you. And I don't want you to chalk that up to bad books, bad writing, because there's a lot going on. I mean, I'm in a really weird place in my life and in my reading life, and I'm finding it difficult to focus on things. Maybe it's too difficult for me right now to connect with things that I would normally connect to. So I finished No Time for Goodbye and was just really disappointed with it and really feeling kind of bad about me, to be honest with you, because I couldn't name things that it did wrong. I couldn't tell you why I was dissatisfied with the book. I just was. And that's hard for me. It's difficult to not even know what to tell you. I got down on myself pretty hard for that, and still this morning was trying to think of exactly I what I wanted to say about these books, specifically that first one, and put my finger on exactly what kept going wrong for me. After reading that one, I decided to pick up Elevator Pitch because it was by far the one that I was most interested in. And it was slightly more enjoyable, but I'm not going to lie. Like, this was another disappointment for me. Based on the synopsis, which is that there are all of these elevator accidents happening in New York City. Elevators are falling from the top floors of their building. People are dying. At first, they seem like coincidences, but then it becomes clear there's something sinister involved. Nobody is sure if this is a terrorist plot or if these are hackers. I mean, what's going on? It sounded like it would be tense. It sounded like it would be suspenseful and exciting. And I just wasn't there. Again, I just was not in this book. I couldn't care about the characters. And I will say that in Elevator Pitch, there is a huge cast of characters. At any given time, you may be following a mother and her estranged adult daughter, the mayor and his son, two detectives who are investigating these accidents, as well as antagonists. There's a couple of antagonists that you get perspectives from. This also happened in No Time for Goodbye, so I did begin to suspect that maybe, my problems with these books does have something to do with presenting me the antagonist on a silver platter, giving the antagonist a voice before the antagonist should be allowed to have one. It's distracting, and it reveals too much about your antagonist or potential antagonist for you to fear them. There are a lot of books that do this. I've read a lot of books that do this, where it'll cut scene to whatever your bad guy is doing. But to me, that works best when it's very limited and it's still very mysterious. And in the couple of cases or incidents, well, who they are and maybe their motivations remain secret, you learn too much about the type of people they are. There's not enough mystery surrounding them at that point for me personally. So I think that kind of played a part, but I don't think that was the main issue. I'll sum it all up for you. Just give me time. After Elevator Pitch was a disappointment, it was just whatever. I'll just read whatever book, whatever one. So I went with Fear the Worst. This has just under a 4-star average rating on Goodreads. This is the story of a single father whose daughter comes to stay with him from time to time, and one night she doesn't return from work. She doesn't come home, and he's concerned, so he goes to her job, and the place that she said she works has never heard of her. So he goes on this search for his daughter. It leads him all the way to Seattle, trying to find this girl and learning things about who his daughter really is along the way. Fear the Worst was a lot more, was a similar story to No Time for Goodbye, but I think it was done better. And that's just my personal opinion. It's not rated higher, so, take that with a grain of salt. But I think it was done better. While, again, I still did not connect with characters. I still did not care for them very much. I was a little bit more intrigued. There were a couple of intriguing characters in Fear the Worst. Not characters that I developed any sort of attachment to or connection with, but characters that made me take notice. You know, they weren't generic. No Time for Goodbye was 2.5 stars. Elevator Pitch was probably a 3. Fear the Worst was probably a 3. And I think beyond not making a connection to anybody in the novel, the other frustrating thing about those 3 books, or maybe it's a Linwood Barclay issue in general, because I gotta say, you know, A Noise Downstairs kind of does this too, but the twist, the main reveal, the major reveal of the book always relies on a bit of backstory that we're not told as the reader. It like all of the problems that these characters are experiencing are all due to some event or occurrence in one of the characters' backstories that you're never told about as the reader, or you're never given any hints to, unless I'm completely oblivious. Therefore, yeah, it's a twist and it's a surprising one, but it's not rewarding in any way. I've spoken about this before. Part of the enjoyment is playing a mental game with the author, and I can't engage in that game with these books, because otherwise I'm just guessing. I'm guessing what a scenario could be. I'm not piecing together hints that Linwood Barclay has left me. I'm just pulling from my experience of other thrillers that I've read in the past and saying, well, it could be this, but there's no evidence in the story to lead me to believe that. I'm just throwing darts at the wall. That's frustrating. Are the twists good? They're believable. They work. They don't do a disservice to the story. They kind of give you a, oh, okay. Well, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I went into A Noise Downstairs incredibly skeptical because, let's be real, things are going badly. But A Noise Downstairs turns out was the most enjoyable read for me. I have problems with it, and I'll try to get into those as much as I can without spoiling anything for you. But A Noise Downstairs is about a man named Paul. Innocent, unsuspecting Paul stumbles on to a grisly scene one night. Someone is trying to dispose of bodies, and he ends up suffering a major head injury, and would have died had it not been for a stroke of luck. But anyways, so afterwards, Paul is suffering both from PTSD because of the experience, and also a head injury, a legit head injury that messes with his memory. Paul is also seeing a therapist named Anna, and Paul is increasingly troubled about the why of his situation. Why did it happen? Why was this person doing this thing? So he enlists, the support of his therapist and his wife to kind of do further research into the event, the perpetrator, etc. His wife ends up gifting him with a typewriter. And as Paul starts to learn things, he swears that he can hear the typewriter typing at night. No one claims to be messing with the typewriter, but he hears it. Nobody else can hear it. Paul starts to doubt his own sanity, and the story goes on from there. What was good about this one is that I was immediately interested. Like, the story starts out with a bang. The story is very interesting from the beginning. The other ones, Elevator Pitch kind of was, but the atmosphere of this one is a little bit more familiar to me. It's a place I'm a little more comfortable with. Mystery, dread, heaviness, like those kinds of things, those are present in this book. And if you look up A Noise Downstairs at all, 3.81, by the way, average rating on Goodreads. But if you look it up, or if you look into it at all, there's no secret that A Noise Downstairs is a part from Linwood Barclay's body of work. It doesn't fit in. Like, which one of these things don't belong? Oh, it's a noise downstairs. So I wasn't surprised that I had a different reaction to this. This one's more engaging and just more used to. It's more comfortable for me. It's what I'm used to, and it felt like there was more at stake. I love a narrator that has to question their own sanity. It's insufferable, but at the same time, I mean, I do really like a narrator who's questioning whether they even know what they're talking about. This book also does something that I have praised in the past, but have never really revealed what it is, because it's a huge plot twist. Every time it appears in a book, it is a gigantic slap in the face plot twist. So I'm not going to tell you what it is. And I'm not even going to say that it was probably the best decision in this book, but it's so ballsy. Peter Swanson has done it, John Mars has done it, and Linwood Barclay has done it. Any conclusion that you're building towards as far as figuring out the novel is concerned, it's all erased as soon as an author does this. That I have more respect for him because of that, because it's a heavily criticized move, but I can appreciate it. So I'm probably walking away from A Noise Downstairs giving it a 3.5, because there were things about it that were a little bit contrived, and it's definitely one of those books that I can think of different ways I would have executed it, or different ways that it could have been executed that would make me like it more. And that's always a problem for me. If I can develop a more clever route to the twist, or an even better twist or something, like, then I end up being slightly like, was it enjoyable? Yeah, but there is this. So the other ones, I didn't even care enough. I would have to be writing a whole different story if I was going to turn it into something that I would have preferred. Like Elevator Pitch, for example, what I would have preferred is a whole different type of book. And if something's not my type of book, I just, and then I have to worry about being really objective. Is it good? Is Linwood Barclay a good writer? Linwood Barclay is good. I mean, just good. Like, I don't think he's breaking the mold here. I don't think he's doing anything that is shocking, or anything that, someone else hasn't done before. Is it distracting writing? No, absolutely not. Like, it doesn't stand out one way or the other. Welcome to the last month of my life. I have felt like this for a month, and I will be super happy to have filmed this video, post it on YouTube, and then forget about this experience, because not being able to articulate, I just don't feel passionately. And that's what it is. Thank you. Thank you. I have to feel passionately about a book. I either have to love it or hate it. And I just read 4 books from somebody that I did not feel passionate about in any way. I don't feel any passion for these books. I neither hate them nor love them. They just sort of exist. And I'm uncomfortable with that, because I'm a super emotionally charged person, and I read books to feel emotions. And when I'm walking away from 4 books and not having felt anything, like not feeling passionately and deeply about them, is holy cow. This is probably a different look at me than you've ever had. And it's not unheard of. Like, there's a lot of books out there that I'm like, yeah, it was okay, not great, but I just read 4 in a row. And so I'm starting to wonder if I can feel anything at all. I think that's the problem. The problem isn't the book. The problem is the book's effect on me, which is I'm starting to think I have lost all passion for books because I didn't have any for these 4. So we got to do something about this. All in all, you know what? And I always feel like I'm always afraid that when I have this sort of response, or when I have any kind of negative response to a pick my book selection that you guys have made, in this case it was pick my author, I'm always afraid. Like, I don't want anybody to feel like they made a bad choice, because I am able to remove 5 books from my physical TBR shelf. Like, that's incredible. Something was accomplished here. I wanted to love them and I didn't. But the good news is they're not going to take up space anymore. I can move on. I have room for more books. And I know now I'm not going to perpetually buy Linwood Barclay novels now just because I recognize his name. Because now I know that I have a problem connecting to his work. So you've saved me a ton of money. My husband thanks you. That was my experience reading the author that you selected for me in the month of April. We should probably do this again because I am loving the binge reading experience where I read a lot of books that have one thing in common. I'm enjoying it. So let me know down in the comment section below if you are surprised at my response or reaction to this author, if you feel similarly, or if you think I'm nuts because it's the most amazing work you've ever read. I want to know your opinion about it. I love a bit of discourse and discussion. So let's have that down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon.